Welcome back to Community Dialogues with a regenerative twist. This is Faith Reeves. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator here in Fairfield, Iowa, and we're picking it back up in the new year. And with me today, I've got Jeff Topel, a good friend, a soil enthusiast, a farmer in our community, and a fellow coworker. And I'm gonna just ask Jeff a few questions so you can get to know him and start building that awareness around some of the farmers in our community. Jeff, where are you from?
I'm from Lake Mills, Wisconsin, just east of Madison. And I grew up on a 60-cow dairy farm there. My parents still farm in the area. They have 500 dairy cows now. My older sister and brother-in-law farm with them. And I went to UW-Madison and spent 8 years there, and then went to work with John Deere. Mm-hmm. And they took me to Chicago, and then quickly moved to Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you grew up in ag, and then you went into environmental studies. Mm-hmm. What was your primary focus as a young adult? What really lit you up?
At first, farming, right? So driving old tractors, and but also that whole time there's a wetland behind our house, like across the field, and I would ride my bike back there. Mm-hmm. And just hang out in the wetland. So I thought I was going to be a farmer for a while, and then I began working on equipment so much, like I thought I should be an engineer.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be tied down to milking cows every day. And so I went to college to be a biological systems engineer and work on restoring our lakes and streams. And that major focuses on agriculture, right? So I was kind of in my lane, but I quickly I kind of got frustrated that as an engineer, you can only clean up like a few farms at a time. So I was doing like NRCS type work, and I had an opportunity to go to work for John Deere in precision ag.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe I could have a bigger impact on the planet by, precision ag. You can clean up or reduce the amount of fertilizers, chemicals, diesel fuel that each farmer is using.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
Wow. And so instead of, were you doing conservation plan type work with the NRCS? And so instead of going, one farm to one farm saying, okay, you need to employ these conservation practices, you're going out and helping influence any John Deere precision farmer, helping them understand how they can be more judicious in their applications.
Well, and so my role is, right now I lead a software team, and we develop simulators of the software that our customers use. So then our dealers can support the customers, and our customers can practice in the off season. And then if they know how to use the precision ag features on their equipment, then they're more likely to be successful with them and to use them more.
Yeah, and that helps them reduce their inputs.
Right.
Helps their bottom line, but it helps our environment immensely. Okay, so what caused you to land in Fairfield?
So I moved to Des Moines for John Deere and met my wife there, and she's from Fairfield originally, Jane Miller. So we were going to have kids and thought, well, her parents are here, so why not come and then we'll have people to help us raise the kids. And also I wanted to try out just at least having some old tractors and some farmland and being able to maybe farm a little bit myself. And land in southeast Iowa is a lot more affordable than right around Des Moines.
Right on. So initially you came down and you bought a homestead, a 4-acre homestead. And with a machine shed and a barn, and that's where you got rolling, right? Mm-hmm. And so small scale agriculture, yeah, for sure. But you're still doing small scale agriculture, but with more land. What happened? What was the next step?
Right. So I didn't know how long I would be able to be here, and so I didn't want to buy too much stuff right away, And I also, how do you buy a whole farm, right? So
Yeah.
4 acres was a good way to start, and buy some old
Perfect homestead.
equipment. Yeah, but fortunately, a farm came for sale a mile away, and I was able to buy it with a friend. So we bought it 50-50. So Adam Conolog and I are farming together, and yeah, so that was 3 years ago. I'm on my 3rd season.
Right on. That's great. And so how do you compare and contrast small scale agriculture, you know, even though you're over 100 acres, you know, that's still considered small, especially in Iowa. How do you compare and contrast, you know, small scale ag to, you know, precision ag? And where are you landing? What are your, you know, preferences?
I'm trying to do both. So, you know, normally in order to afford precision ag equipment, a farmer would need maybe a couple thousand acres. Mm-hmm. And in today's day and age, it seems like in order to be a full-time farmer, you have to have more than that, like 3,000 or 5,000 acres, because I believe the stats are something like 80% of farms have off-farm income. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so what is a small farm anymore? There's most of the farms that we see around are small farms, and especially in this area.
I think anything under like 399 acres is technically a small farm.
And I see a lot of those small farms keeping their older equipment going, and maybe they've got some off the farm income, and I want to help them be successful so that we don't lose so many small farms, right? Because we have been, and it would be a shame. So as we lose small farms, then the small rural communities die out.
Yeah.
And we've got farms in our neighborhood that have 40,000 acres, 10,000 acres, and it's, I don't know, on one hand, that's a very efficient way to grow food for America, right? But it's also not really community anymore. When I was growing up, you know, there was a dairy farm every half mile in our neighborhood, probably across southern Wisconsin, and the farmers would all hang out together. They'd come over and talk to each other all the time, and it was a community.
Yeah.
And we don't have that much like that anymore, but if we can make small farming a little bit more profitable, maybe people can spend a little bit more time having fun with each other. Mm-hmm. So what I do, I want to bring like precision ag to small farms. So what I'm working on kind of is coming up with a model, and I know how to build precision ag equipment a little bit. Like basically, like on my planter, I could build a wire harness and retrofit. Like I took a system off of a 24-row planter.
Yeah.
I purchased it used, and then rewired it and made it work on my 4-row planter. And and then you can use the GPS system like that to be more efficient with your fertilizer and spraying applications.
And so you can take that wiring harness that you've cut down and adjusted to a smaller tractor, and then you can run that GPS, so you can you know, identify where you are in the field, and you know where you were last, you know, because then do you have the recording equipment that, and so you can record, you know, what, you know,
the rate of fertilizer, or the rate of
or
planting,
seeding rate.
Seeding, yeah, and there are GPS equipment on the market that's low cost, maybe $1,500, but it's very limited in what it can do, right? But then you can also buy the high-end stuff used, if you know how to do it, if you know what you're looking for. But it's not just that. So as the mid-sized farms have gone out of business over the years, who's buying their equipment? There isn't many people in the market for that anymore. So if you're like wanting to get started, say you've got the ambition to have a few hundred acres on the side of while you're doing your day job, I just bought a 200 horsepower tractor for $11,000, and it's 45 years old, but it would work very well to farm 1,000 acres, last a very long time, And that's what I've done with all my equipment. So I've just been going to auctions and looking for deals and trying not to spend too much money. And granted, having said that, I've spent far too much money to make a profit at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long time. I have to utilize my day job to pay down that debt. Maybe I can retire early someday.
Yeah. And does retire mean early so that you can farm?
So I could farm, yeah.
Yeah.
And some people inherit land, and then they could go and buy that low-cost equipment and farm their own land maybe and do it in a regenerative way. And
if they had someone to walk them through the process of how you take that 40-year-old tractor and turn it into a piece of equipment that you can use with modern technology and modern knowledge. And so you might have wanted to use a disc and a rototiller, but now you might opt to use it differently. So what are some of the retrofits beyond your wiring harness? I saw that you made a pretty awesome injection setup for your no-till drill, or was it?
For mixing fertilizers, foliar applications.
So you could do in-furrow.
Yeah, so on the planter, a liquid fertilizer system typically costs like several $1,000s, and my planter didn't come with one. I could have bought a second used planter and converted it over, but you don't know if it'll work, and so I just put an ATV sprayer on my planter with a 100-gallon water tank, built a bracket for it, and so I basically had a sprayer system on the planter and to spray in furrow, and that is for starter fertilizer, micronutrients. So it may not handle like the large amount of starter fertilizer that a farmer typically would do, but I don't want to do that because starter fertilizer would burn the microbes in the seed, in the furrow. So I just want to apply a small amount of NPK and micronutrients, what the seed needs. And to make that more efficient, I built a little mixing station, which is pretty simple. It's a cone tank that's like 30 gallons, and I bought like a $100 low pressure pump to pump the water out of it, so that I can filter the water going in through. I bought a 50 mesh like a painter filter bag to put so I can put urea or any kind of fertilizer in the bag, compost tea. Yep.
Biologicals.
Spray water.
Not with your urea.
Yeah, and and the bag sits in a bucket. The bucket's on top of that cone tank, and then so I can spray the fertilizer into the tank. I've got a filter coming out of the tank. Yep. And that way, I've got filtered product going into my planter tank, so I'm not going to plug up my nozzles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And these are kind of things that I had to learn too.
Right, there's a learning curve there.
I was doing things a little bit more manual than that and plugging up nozzles a lot, and so that when I talk about building a model for other people, it's like, what's the lowest cost solution that is really practical?
Do you think you're starting to land on some of those lower cost solutions where you've refined them to the point where you feel it's a good time to maybe share them?
Share designs, maybe, right? So, yeah, and I don't know, I feel like I still need to use them a little bit more. Yeah. Before I were,
yeah, so still an experimental stage.
Still an experimental stage, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've got the engineer's brain, but you've also got you're extremely creative, which I find engineers tend to be extremely creative, but broadly. And so you've gone through some major challenges, and you've also identified some really sweet gems. What are some of those two, right off the bat, that in the last 3 years of, trying to tackle, how do you break into the ground and how do you get going? What are some of the major, what are some things you'd just share to someone who's in your position right now or looking to step in to purchasing a farm? What would you suggest off the bat?
maybe start at the beginning. So if you want to have a small farm, you probably need to be able to repair your own equipment in some ways, build your own equipment. And I started when I was like 6 years old. You know, my dad would get me old lawnmowers, and I would take them apart and put them back together and see if they still run. And did a lot of woodworking, a lot of electrical wiring as a kid. And when I was in college, I spent 3 summers working for a construction company, building farm buildings. It's really hard work, but it's like that's how I'm able to do so much now and save a lot of money.
Because you can do it all yourself.
Because I can do it all myself. And I use YouTube a lot, I use books, but I don't just trust what I see. Like, if somebody is showing how to fix something, I will watch many videos on that same topic to compare and contrast. And I would say start now. So if you think you might farm in 10 years, go to an auction and buy some junk farm equipment for $50 and start building it, fixing it, welding, buy an old welder. And because you can only learn well by doing. And so do the practice. Like, I see a lot of people like not fix their own house because they don't know how, but if you try it, you will know more next time. So I'm not saying like remodel your kitchen if you never tried before, but it's like I started drywalling work on my garage in Des Moines, and I had never done drywall before, but it was good practice, and it's just my garage, so then I'm not going to mess it up too bad.
Yeah.
And so I do that with everything.
Right on.
My biggest problem may be that I try to do everything myself.
Yeah, and farmers are like that. That's kind of the nature. I think I see that. You know, there's not a skill set that a farmer traditionally, you know, isn't willing to tackle. You know, they're going to be their accountant, they're going to be their business manager, they're going to be their agronomist, they're going to be their, you know, ecologist. They're out there doing their carpentry, their electrical, their mechanic work.
And that, like, so I started researching and learning about soil health at least 15 years ago, and I spent most of my free time learning about soil health for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So I would say do that too. John Kempf podcast, Green Cover Seeds podcasts, Nicole Masters' book, For the Love of Soil.
It's really good.
I didn't understand soil health until I read that book. And find out, so what your interests are, right? Because maybe you don't want to like be outside farming. Maybe you want to be processing food or something. There's so many different ways to be involved. Yeah.
So you're on this journey of recovering a farm and bringing the soil health back to your farm. In 10 years, where do you hope you are with your farm? What would you like to see growing on your farm, and how would you like to see your farm plugged into the Jefferson County food web?
So I want to be able to be a model for soil health. So the farm that we purchased was pasture for the last 30 years or so, and probably was corn and soybeans before that. There's a lot of hills, so there was a lot of erosion. There's not much growing there, and so we're really recovering land that's is currently like 1 to 2 feet of compacted clay. And I thought that most soil in Iowa was really fertile, and you just drop a seed in the ground and plant it, and it turns out it's not always. So it's a journey, more than I expected, and I started out trying to do everything according to soil health principles, so that you keep living roots in the ground all the time, cover crops. You don't apply synthetic fertilizers because they'll shut down the microbes that convert nutrients into what plants can use. And what else?
Armor, which is your green cover, but you've got your roots in the ground that are putting the sugars in. You've got the armor over the soil, whether it's mulch or it's plant material. You've got your minimal disturbance.
Yeah, no tillage.
Can't forget animals. I think they are a very important part of having biology active in your soil. And then diversity. Diversity,
yeah. Yeah, so I started out for a couple years trying to do all of that, and quickly learned that, the 2 feet of compacted clay was not going to get broken up by roots if I can't get the plants to grow anyway. you can't get the plants to grow in compacted clay. So finally, I found a low-cost subsoiler this year, and hence I needed to buy a larger tractor because that compacted clay. So I also realized that I'm not going to get the nutrients into the soil that I need, which is foliar sprays and small amount of fertilizer. Like things like you can apply rock phosphate in a regenerative system, but it's going to get bound up by that clay in 2 months and not be utilized, right? So this year I'm going to use some synthetic starter fertilizer and some urea and things that I'm going to do low rates, but I need to get my plants growing. Healthy plants will create soil health.
Yeah.
And so it continues to be an experiment, and in 10 years, hopefully I've got the highest yields in the area with completely regenerative practices, very low inputs. And you know, if you have low inputs, you can make a profit, right? If you're not having to spend the money on fertilizers and chemicals, then you have a profitable farm.
Yeah, that's the secret. The plants will feed everyone else. Plants will feed the soil. That's awesome. Well, I'm here to support you to see that happen. I am a huge fan of what Jeff is doing, and I think he's a wonderful advocate for small-scale agriculture, diversity, and I think he's plugging in pretty nicely to the Jefferson County Food Web. And I would say if you want to learn more, he's someone to really watch and to keep your kind of tabs on him, because I think he's going to be out here teaching us all a lot about how to manage small-scale farming systems.
And thank you to you and Bob Ferguson for helping plug me into the local Southeast Iowa Food Web and having a little farming community here in Fairfield.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. Well,
thank you.
You got to meet Jeff. All right, everyone. Have a great, end of January. We'll see you next time. Bye.